The book of Isaiah was written in a time of deep turmoil and transition in ancient Israel. Isaiah prophesied during the 8th century BCE, a period when the northern kingdom of Israel was falling to the Assyrian Empire and the southern kingdom of Judah was under constant threat. Politically, the people were caught between fear and compromise, often turning to foreign alliances rather than trusting in God. Socially, there was injustice, moral decay, and spiritual complacency. Economically, inequality was rampant. The rich grew richer while the poor were oppressed. Against this backdrop, Isaiah spoke both warning and hope. The passage we're studying, Isaiah 53, is part of what scholars call the servant songs, a set of poetic prophecies describing a mysterious figure called the servant of the Lord. Our lesson begins with a note of disbelief. The message of the suffering servant is so countercultural, so unexpected, that many reject it outright. In ancient Jewish culture, God's power, the arm of the Lord, was expected to be shown through victory and strength. But here, God's power is revealed through humility and weakness. This raises a challenge for us today. In a world that idolizes self-promotion, image control, and instant results, are we prepared to believe in a God who chooses to work through brokenness and suffering? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of a dry ground. The servant is described as vulnerable, like a young plant growing in dry, cracked soil. This imagery reflects both the harsh spiritual climate of the time and the fragile beginnings of the servant's life. He doesn't come from power or privilege. He emerges from obscurity. Modern Christians can take comfort in this. God often chooses the overlooked and underestimated, those who grow in hard places. This verse challenges us to see value not in flashy platforms or worldly success, but in quiet faithfulness. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. These words strike a chord in every generation. The servant experiences not only physical pain, but emotional suffering, rejection, sorrow, and grief. In Jewish tradition, suffering was often seen as a consequence of sin, yet here we have a righteous figure deeply familiar with human pain. Today, many still wrestle with loneliness, betrayal, and depression. This verse assures us that God is not distant from human suffering. He enters into it. Jesus, whom many Christians believe is the fulfillment of this passage, bore not just humanity's sins, but its heartbreaks. Verse 4 shifts the focus from observation to purpose. The servant's suffering is not random, it is redemptive. He takes on the griefs and sorrows of others. In modern terms, this is the essence of intercession, of standing in the gap for others. In a world that encourages people to mind their own business, the servant bears burdens not his own. This is a powerful call to modern believers to walk with others in their pain, to be present, sacrificial, and compassionate, as Christ was. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. Here the text gets personal. The servant suffers because of our wrongs, not his. His wounds bring our healing. In Jewish tradition, the idea of substitutionary suffering wasn't fully developed at the time, making this prophecy radical. For Christians, this verse points directly to the cross, where Jesus was crucified for the sins of the world. But the application is broader than theology. It reminds us that the path to healing in relationships, in communities, even in nations, often requires someone absorbing the pain. Forgiveness is costly. Reconciliation often involves one party choosing to bear the weight of another's wrong. All we like sheep have gone astray. This verse highlights the universal nature of human failure. Sheep are not rebellious by nature, they simply wander off. That's what we do in relationships, in our spiritual lives, even in our moral compass. We drift. The beauty of this verse is its honesty. It doesn't shame us, it simply states a truth, and then it reveals the grace. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. This is the heartbeat of the gospel, not that we found our way back to God, but that he pursued us through the servant. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. In the face of injustice, the servant remained silent, not out of weakness, but out of resolve. Jewish law highly valued justice and legal defense, yet this servant chooses surrender over defense. In our culture, silence is often seen as losing, and we are trained to fight back, to defend ourselves, to win arguments. But here, silence becomes a form of strength. In certain situations and in conflict and suffering, dignity is found not in retaliation, but in restraint. Our lesson is a portrait of redemptive suffering, a concept that is just as unsettling today as it was then. For modern Christians, and even those still exploring faith, this passage calls us to reimagine what strength looks like. It calls us to stop running from pain and instead ask, how might God be using this not just to shape me, but to redeem others through me? That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week.